The fact that the discovery of Angkor is attributed to Henri Mouot amuses the Cambodians, as the site has always been inhabited, and it was the villagers themselves who led the explorer there in 1859. Whatever the reality, as soon as Monsieur Mouot's travel journals were published, the myth of an ancient civilization lost in the heart of the jungle, an Asian Atlantis, immediately fired the public's imagination. In 1900, the French School of the Far East was created. Its mission was to contribute to the study of the history of Asian civilization, ranging from India to Japan. After the signing of the treaty between France and Siam in 1907, Angkor was returned to Cambodia. The school then undertook the tasks of revealing and restoring the temples of Angkor and studying the history of the Angkor civilization. The school stayed on the site until the arrival of the Khmer Rouge. The country was then plunged into a long period of political unsteadiness. In 1992, when Cambodia was placed under the provisional authority of the United Nations, the urgency of the situation was clear. To save Angkor, the national symbol, was to save the country itself.
Je dus lancer un appel à l'aide.
To avoid a disaster, I had to launch an appeal for help beyond the borders of our country. I pledge eternal gratitude to those great and friendly nations who responded so generously. In saving Angkor, they restored our past and gave us confidence in our future.
Fully aware of the urgent nature of the crisis, UNESCO went into action immediately.
I therefore appeal to the international community as a whole to put the stamp of universal solidarity on the rebirth of Angkor.
Le mouvement de sauvetage d'Angkor est un mouvement très spécifique aux conditions.
The action for safeguarding Angkor is very specific due to conditions prevailing in Cambodia from 1993 to the present.
Depuis 1993 jusqu'à maintenant, l'an 2003, nous avons donc la chance de pouvoir bénéficier, nous Cambodgiens.
We, Cambodians, now have the good fortune to benefit from 10 years of exemplary collaboration between UNESCO, the international community, and the survivors of the Khmer Rouge Holocaust.
International et les survivants de l'Holocauste Khmer Rouge.
There has never been any doubt that Angkor, with its history, monuments, and environmental qualities, is one of the cultural jewels of the planet. But for a site to be inscribed on the World Heritage List, the applicant country has to fulfill requirements that Cambodia, at the end of the Civil War, could not meet.
Il n'y avait pas de loi.
There were no laws, no rules, nor any legislation on cultural heritage, and of course, nothing at the time which could meet the criteria. But above all, there was no exact demarcation. We had no way of knowing. We knew that Angkor should be inscribed, but what to inscribe? And so, that is why we inscribed 40,000 hectares. It is the largest archaeological and historical property on the World Heritage List. We decided to inscribe Angkor because we considered that inscribing a site which meets all the conditions and that is subsequently safeguarded is for prestige, whereas Angkor was an urgency, a threatened site, a site in danger.
So UNESCO and the Cambodian authorities decided to take an innovative, multidisciplinary and integrated approach, favouring both conservation and development. It was in this same spirit that at the Tokyo conference, 30 countries and 7 international organizations co-signed a declaration aimed at helping Cambodia to safeguard its heritage and also giving it the means to reconstruct the country. The ICC was then created. Its mission was to guarantee the quality of all the work carried out on the site and to promote and coordinate the international aid, which amounted to more than $50 million in 10 years. France and Japan, the originators of the ICC, are its co-presidents, and UNESCO ensures the secretariat.
Le Comité international de coordination pour la sauvegarde d'Angkor
The ICC is an original mechanism which UNESCO henceforth proposes in countries which have endured conflict situations.
De l'adopter pour d'autres pays sortant de conflit.
Since 1993, the ICC meets twice a year in Cambodia. It has become an irreplaceable forum for dealing with diplomatic and technical issues.
Nous allons dans la direction que prévoit la déclaration de Tokyo.
We are moving in the direction foreseen by the Tokyo Declaration. There are very many active participants for the restoration and the conservation of the Angkor monuments. There is now excellent coordination and international cooperation. The Cambodian government is taking an increasing role through the Apsara authority, which is now involved in the work of our committee. Apsara is the Cambodian administrative body created in 1995 to manage the Angkor site. Its missions are articulated around two principal axes.
Firstly, to protect and to enhance the World Heritage Site of Angkor. Secondly, to develop tourism in Angkor and the region of Siem Reap.
Angkor is not only an open-air museum, but it is also a living and inhabited site. There are about 100 villages situated in the heart of this archaeological park. The presence of these villages is one of the riches of the site. Teams of scientists are studying the Khmer culture and planning of the zone of Angkor in order to understand how this civilization has perpetuated itself throughout the centuries. Buddhist places of worship are very present on the site, and sometimes even inside the monuments, where certain statues are particularly venerated. Local inhabitants are employed for the upkeep of the site and as workers on the restoration sites. The villagers also try to make a living from the tourist development.
Okay, my postcard. I think for $1. Hello, sir. You want a cold drink?
The CMAC, the Cambodian Mine Action Centre, is the national organisation for mine clearing. General Ken Sopian, who is with us today, is in charge. The organisation is financed by Germany, who contribute $850,000 per year. Now the Cambodians themselves clear the mines. In the beginning, we were 10 French experts for 50 Cambodian mine clearers, and now I am alone with 220 Cambodians. The demining is now carried out by these young men, and they are doing a very good job. In 10 years, thanks to financial help from France, the European Union and Germany, the site has been completely cleared of mines. The EFEO was able, in 1993, to start working again on the royal terraces, which they finished 5 years later. The Bapuan, one of the most important temples on the site, was chosen as the second large-scale French project.
The objective of this program, taken up again in 1995 with a deadline of 2004-2005, was to carry on the work from where it was left off in 1970 and to continue the process of stabilizing the embankments and restoring the monuments to its original form by replacing all the original masonry, which is scattered all over the forest.
However, which architectural principle should be chosen? In fact, a profound architectural transformation was undertaken on this 11th century mountain temple of Shiva in the 16th century, when Buddhists constructed a gigantic statue of the Buddha lying down. The final restoration had to make these two historical contributions evident in order to satisfy both scientists and visitors. In 1997, given the increasing technical nature of the debates, UNESCO formed a group of ad hoc experts within the ICC. These three independent experts bring a fresh outlook to the working hypotheses and approaches for restoration formulated by the teams.
Dans les restaurations qui sont conduites ici, est-ce qu'on doit viser une remise à neuf?
For the restoration being carried out here, the question is, should we aim at a complete renovation, or should we, on the contrary, keep the poetry of this half-abandoned site overrun by the Angkor? It is a very poetic and romantic setting, but it's also very dangerous, because the site is gradually deteriorating.
This type of problem is to be found at Prekan, a temple built at the end of the 12th century by King Jayavarman VII. The team from the World Monuments Fund, led by John Sanday, opted since 1991 for a light conservation of the site. They kept the public works down to the minimum necessary for consolidating the site and have reopened to visitors this charming but once dangerous site. The same team has been working since the year 2000 at Ta Som, where the restoration is now being carried out by Cambodian workers who trained on the previous site. The German team from Germany's Apsara conservation project, supervised by Dr. Hans Leisen, used their scientific and technical competencies in stone conservation to carry out a surgical restoration of the Apsara's bas-relief, lintels and pediments or front walls of Angkor Wat. It had become urgent. This work of pointing and injecting mortar, which is physically, chemically and aesthetically compatible with the original sandstone, obtains excellent results.
All the scale to the surface. Then we start to consolidate all the decay area by using the different type of epoxy.
A training scheme is included in every project. The international teams are keen to transmit their skills to the young Cambodian professionals trained at the Royal University of Fine Arts of Phnom Penh, thanks to help from Japan. But the training is not limited to restoration techniques. Through the Programme de Fonds de Solidarité Prioritaire, France provides an institutional support for Apsara by supplying the necessary technical skills for carrying out the missions.
So these technical teams are here for the management and conservation of the monuments. There is a first team for maintenance, for the upkeep of the monuments themselves, and the second team manages the surrounding areas in order to allow the entrance to the monuments in the most orderly way possible of an ever-increasing number of visitors. Finally, there is a team of preventive archaeologists, because once the decision had been taken to manage the site, we had to make sure that it was done with the utmost respect for the archaeological heritage.
Today, Apsara consists of 40 managers and 750 employees in 5 departments.
Apsara has gradually put into place the means to carry out its role of project manager. It also imposed, so to speak, its vision, its method, and its know-how, and increasingly encourage exchange between the teams on the Angkor site.
There's really no lack of activity on the restoration site of Sho Setevoda, launched in the year 2000. Yung Wai-ying, leader of the Chinese team, has not only trained the Cambodian workers to master the techniques of dismantling and reconstructing the various architectural units, but also of chiseling to achieve an exact reproduction of the missing pieces.
Italian group here in Angkor started this work in 1995 with the study of the 3 southeast towers of Prerup Temple.
The Italians have also restored the banks of the moats of Angkor Wat, with financial aid from the World Heritage Fund. All the teams present on the Angkor site are aware that with their Cambodian partners, they are living out a wonderful human adventure. That is why so many scientific groups have joined the project at Angkor. For example, the Royal Angkor Foundation of Hungary at Preco, who were followed by a German team in 1999, or the team of Indonesians at the Royal Palace. Since 2002, a Swiss group has been responsible for the renowned Bante Srey temple, built of rose-colored sandstone and rich in decorations and astonishingly fine sculptures. In 2003, a team from India has begun to clean and consolidate Tapron. Overgrown for so long by vegetation, this temple is now one of the most frequently visited sites, which poses serious problems of security. JSA, the Japanese government team for the safeguarding of Angkor, every year since 1996, has organized a symposium of Bayon, where exchanges focus on the technical points of view related to conservation actions. JSA had first of all concentrated its efforts on the Bayon, the temple famous for its towers covered with faces.
1994, I began restoration conservation work. At first, we arrived at Bayon Temple, northern library of Bayon Temple. It's finished at 1997, and we are preparing to make up a master plan for a whole complex of Bayon Temple.
At present, the JSA is restoring one of the 12 towers of Prasat Sur Prat, known as the Towers of the Court Dancers, and it is also carrying out archaeological excavations on the site. There is also their important work on the restoration of the Northern Library of Angkor Wat. The second Japanese team from the University of Sofia has also been working for many years at Angkor. The restoration of the Dike Road of Angkor Wat is accompanied by training in masonry for the Cambodian technicians. In 2001 at Bantak Dai, the archaeologists from Sofia, led by Professor Yoshiaki Ishizawa, made an important discovery. They uncovered 274 parts of statues of Buddha and 4 pillars, all buried together. These objects are now being studied. These pieces will be put in storage at the conservation unit of Angkor, where all the objects concerning the Khmer statues discovered on the site are housed. These buildings were rehabilitated in 1996 thanks to Japan. The EFEO's inventory of their collections has proved to be a fundamental help in the fight against looting of Khmer works of art.
L'une des actions les plus urgentes qu'il a fallu prendre en 1992.
One of the most urgent actions we had to take in 1992 was to protect the site, draw up a security plan, and gradually establish a legal framework for its protection. Thanks to other governments who proved their friendship towards Cambodia, and particularly France, a police force of 500 men was formed and trained to guard the site. These police were armed to begin with, and were equipped with motorbikes and modern means of communication to enable them to cope with the serious looting at the site of Angkor.
And that is how Cambodia, thanks to a whole range of measures, has become the country which has obtained the restitution of the greatest number of pieces during these last years. The memory, as it were, of all these international actions coordinated by the ICC is housed in the International Documentation Center at Siem Reap.
After the stage of safeguarding and urgency, we reached the development stage. The Conference of Paris will serve to spell out the main lines of action which we all, as members of the international community interested in Angkor, should now undertake with the Cambodians. The conference should endeavour to define the way in which Angkor will be shown over the next 10 years to the millions of visitors who will be arriving at the site. How will we be able to receive them? How will we be able to preserve the site, taking into account this huge influx of visitors?
With more than 300,000 international visitors in 2002, and 1 million foreseen in 2010, the site of Angkor is on its way to becoming the #1 destination for cultural tourism in Southeast Asia. In 1999, Apsara had entrusted the sale of tickets to a private company. This revenue provides Apsara with a substantial budget for conservation and enhancement of the site. A particularly strong effort has been made with the signposting, thus satisfying the large number of tourists who like to make their own way around the site.
On the Angkor site, we are constantly improving the way the visitors are received in order that they feel really welcome. I think that the next step will be the development of the park itself. The park is huge and has an enormous potential for walks, cycling, or even riding on elephants, which we should take advantage of.
What is left to work out is how do we organize the visits so that the tourists do not all end up in the same place at the same time, as is often the case at Phnom Bakeng at sunset. Many other temples offer sights even more spectacular. This would avoid the difficult return journeys to Siem Reap in the evening. We must also take into consideration the fact that more and more Cambodian tourists dream of coming to Angkor. At the Khmer New Year in April, crowds of people turn up, especially at Phnom Kulen, the cradle of Angkor civilization. This period is a time for great rejoicing. Some temples like Bakong at Roluos or the Vatatuea receive the population of the surrounding villages for all sorts of games, and also for the rituals that ensure a year of happiness and prosperity. The growth of tourism requires us to consider urban development. Siem Reap must adapt its infrastructure to cope with these new needs. Many hotels have sprung up in the last few years, principally beside the main roads. A plan of the ground occupation drawn up by Apsara has been submitted to the government to help put some order into this rather chaotic situation. The new jobs created at Siem Reap attract Cambodians from all regions of the country. It is estimated that the population has doubled in 10 years. The Japanese Agency for International Cooperation has conducted an in-depth study to try and find a solution to the crucial problem of the water supply. The FDA, the French Agency for Development, financed the construction of a new road serving the tourist development zone known as the Gateways of Angkor.
C'est une nouvelle zone qui représente actuellement plus de 300 hectares.
This is a new zone of more than 300 hectares, purchased and owned by Apsara, on which is planned to build some hotels, leisure centers, reception areas, and perhaps a museum.
The draining and purification of the river Siem Reap is also a priority. The banks will be freed of their occupants to avoid excessive pollution and to develop a green belt running through the town as a place for future walks. Siem Reap, with its pagodas and its old colonial district, has a certain charm, but other leisure activities must rapidly be proposed.
We can say that Cambodia has a great potential for tourism, thanks to the heritage of the splendid Khmer civilization, symbolized by Angkor. So, Angkor is also the hope for future development of the country. It is obvious that tourism is a priority for the Cambodian economy. Tourism can be looked at as a kind of locomotive which will pull other wagons. That is to say, they are the economic area of Cambodia. So it is, in this sense, that we feel strongly that Angkor embodies the symbol of reconciliation and the development of Cambodia.
Oh,